In the complex and often polarized arena of American politics, certain exchanges transcend ordinary debate and enter into the realm of something far more poignant, something that captures the heart of the public while simultaneously challenging the individuals involved to confront the deeper truths beneath the surface of policy, rhetoric, and ideology. Such was the case when Senator Tommy Tuberville, a figure often associated with sharp partisanship and fiery remarks, found himself laughing at Representative Jasmine Crockett, a rising Democratic lawmaker known for her bluntness, directness, and unwillingness to back down in heated exchanges. What began as a seemingly routine display of political sparring took an entirely unexpected turn when Crockett introduced into the conversation a deeply personal and profoundly moving element, a letter from her father, written during his service in Vietnam. That single letter transformed the atmosphere, leaving Tuberville and many others momentarily speechless, highlighting the immense power of personal history to cut through political noise. To appreciate why this exchange resonated so strongly, it is essential to first understand the political personas of the individuals involved. Tommy Tuberville, before becoming a U.S. Senator representing Alabama, was widely known as a college football coach. His transition from sports to politics exemplifies a broader trend in American society, where celebrity and visibility can become pathways to political power. His campaign drew heavily on themes of conservative populism, and since arriving in the Senate, he has positioned himself as a staunch supporter of former President Donald Trump, aligning with hard-right positions on issues ranging from the military to immigration. At times, Tuberville's rhetoric has been provocative, even controversial, especially when it intersects with the sensitive realities of America's armed forces. On the other side of the exchange stands Jasmine Crockett, a Democrat representing Texas. Crockett is part of a younger generation of lawmakers who have brought a new intensity and passion to the political discourse in Washington. Her background as an attorney and activist informs her direct style of communication. She does not shy away from challenging Republicans head-on, often employing sharp language and strategic framing to expose what she sees as hypocrisy or contradiction in her opponent's arguments. For her, politics is not simply a performance, but a platform to connect deeply with both her constituents and the broader public. The clash between these two figures, then, seemed inevitable. Tuberville's brash confidence and Crockett's fiery conviction create a combustible dynamic whenever their paths cross. Yet what distinguished this particular moment was that Crockett chose not to rely solely on argumentation, statistics, or political framing. Instead, she turned to a deeply personal narrative, invoking her father's experience in Vietnam and, more specifically, a letter he had written during that turbulent period. Such a move changes the tenor of a debate because it introduces lived experience into what is otherwise an arena of abstracted policy disputes. The Vietnam War holds a unique place in the American imagination. It was not only one of the longest conflicts in U.S. history, but also one of the most divisive. Millions of Americans were either directly or indirectly impacted, and the scars of the war, emotional, cultural, and political, still resonate. For many families, the letters sent home from the battlefield were lifelines, fragile connections between soldiers immersed in danger and uncertainty, and the loved ones waiting anxiously thousands of miles away. These letters carried not only updates about daily survival, but also deep reflections on patriotism, sacrifice, and the meaning of service. By presenting her father's Vietnam letter, Crockett did more than appeal to sentimentality. She reminded the public, and Tuberville in particular, of the human cost of political decisions, especially those involving the military. What made Tuberville's reaction especially significant was his initial laughter. In American political discourse, laughter is often weaponized as a tool of dismissal, a signal that one's opponent is not worthy of serious consideration. When Tuberville laughed at Crockett, it was perceived by many as an attempt to diminish her voice, to undercut the gravity of her argument by framing it as amusing or trivial. But laughter in such moments can backfire, especially when the counterpoint is not simply another political talking point, but something rooted in generational sacrifice and national memory. When Crockett invoked her father's words from Vietnam, she shifted the conversation from the performative to the personal, and the laughter that had seemed powerful suddenly appeared hollow. The letter itself, while personal to Crockett's family, resonates universally with those who understand the stakes of war. Veterans and their families across the United States can relate to the fear, the the resilience, and the hope embedded in wartime correspondence. Such letters stand as testaments to the human dimension of military service, far removed from partisan sound bites. They are reminders that political debates about defense spending, veterans' benefits, or foreign policy are not abstract. They directly affect the lives of real people who sacrifice in ways few others can comprehend. When Crockett introduced this letter, she effectively reminded the Senate chamber and the broader public that behind every policy position lies a lived reality that should not be reduced to a punchline. This moment also speaks to a larger dynamic in American politics, the contrast between performative politics and substantive engagement. In an age of constant media attention, many lawmakers lean into sound bites, quips, and dismissive gestures, knowing that viral moments often carry more influence than detailed policy analysis. Laughter, smirks, and exaggerated indignation often dominate coverage more than nuanced discussion. Crockett's decision to bring forward her father's Vietnam letter represented a deliberate break from this pattern. Instead of engaging in rhetorical one-upmanship, she grounded the debate in something real, unassailable, and profoundly human. It is worth considering how this exchange was received by different audiences. Among Crockett's supporters, it was seen as a powerful example of her ability to rise above cheap dismissals and ground political argumentation in personal truth. For veterans and their families, regardless of political affiliation, the letter served as a reminder that their experiences are not to be laughed at or brushed aside. Even among some conservatives, there was recognition that Tuberville's laughter came across as insensitive, highlighting the dangers of leaning too heavily on performative dismissal in moments when the stakes demand gravity. From a broader perspective, the incident underscores the importance of memory in political debate. Vietnam remains a sensitive subject in American history, one that evokes questions about patriotism, government accountability, and the burden carried by those who served. When politicians invoke Vietnam, they often do so in ways that reinforce particular ideological narratives. Some use it as a cautionary tale about foreign entanglements, while others frame it as a story of bravery under impossible circumstances. Crockett's invocation of her father's letter was neither propagandistic nor abstract. It was personal, and in its authenticity, it commanded respect. This exchange also invites reflection on the evolving role of personal narratives in political communication. In recent years, lawmakers across the spectrum have increasingly turned to stories from their families and communities to make political points more relatable. These stories cut through data and policy jargon, allowing ordinary citizens to see themselves in the issues being debated. Yet not all stories are equally powerful. A story rooted in military service carries particular weight in American society, given the high regard in which service members are held. By presenting her father's Vietnam letter, Crockett not only humanized her argument, but also tapped into a reservoir of collective memory and respect that transcends partisan divides. The consequences of this exchange for Tuberville are also worth analyzing. While his laughter may have been intended as a dismissive gesture, its impact was to place him in a position of apparent insensitivity. In politics, perception often matters as much as intention, and in this case, the perception was that of a senator who mocked a fellow lawmaker only to be silenced by a reminder of sacrifice and service. For someone who has positioned himself as a defender of military values and patriotism, such a moment carries reputational risks. It challenges the coherence of his political identity, raising questions about whether his actions align with the principles he claims to uphold. In the aftermath, discussions around the incident highlighted not only the specific dynamics between Tuberville and Crockett, but also the broader issue of how politicians treat one another in public discourse. Civility, or the lack thereof, has become a defining feature of contemporary American politics. When laughter replaces argument, when mockery substitutes for engagement, the public is left with theater rather than substance. Crockett's choice to invoke her father's Vietnam letter disrupted that cycle, forcing a pause in theater and introducing an element of realness that cut through the noise. There's also a generational dimension to this moment. Crockett represents a younger cohort of lawmakers who are often underestimated or dismissed by more established political figures. Tuberville's laughter can be seen as part of a broader pattern of underestimation, one that assumes newer or younger voices are not to be taken seriously. Yet Crockett's response demonstrated how generational perspectives can revitalize political debate. bringing forward stories and truths that older approaches might overlook. By centering her father's Vietnam letter, she bridged generational experience, connecting the sacrifices of an older generation with the political debates of today. The resonance of this exchange extends beyond the immediate political players. It serves as a case study in how moments of authenticity can disrupt cycles of partisanship. For citizens weary of political theater, it offers a glimpse of what politics could be when grounded in genuine human experience. It shows that even in the most contentious environments, appeals to shared humanity have the power to silence dismissiveness and command attention. Looking forward, one must consider the implications of such moments for the broader trajectory of American politics. As polarization deepens and the temptation toward mockery and performance intensifies, the challenge for lawmakers is to resist reducing serious issues to punchlines. The example of Crockett's invocation of her father's letter demonstrates that there is still room for seriousness, for depth, and for a politics that respects lived experience. The lesson for figures like Tuberville is clear. Laughter may win a moment, but respect wins a room. Ultimately, the story of Tuberville's laughter and Crockett's response is not just about two lawmakers clashing in a chamber. It is about the power of memory, the weight of sacrifice, and the ability of personal truth to puncture the armor of political performance. In a society where political debate so often feels hollow, moments like these remind us of the stakes that lie beneath the surface. They remind us that politics is not simply about scoring points, but about grappling with the realities of human lives shaped by policy, history, and sacrifice. As we reflect on this exchange, it becomes clear that Crockett's choice to invoke her father's Vietnam letter was more than a rhetorical tactic. It was a statement about what deserves respect in political discourse and about the kind of seriousness that public service demands. Tuberville's laughter may have been intended to dismiss, but the silence that followed the reading of that letter spoke volumes. It revealed the enduring truth that behind every political debate are human stories that cannot and should not be laughed away.